The Edwin Classroom Success Team member we have representing Alberta is Mr. Jamie Anderson. He is an Edwin Classroom Success Team facilitator, and he lives in Calgary. He's an educator with many years' experience, and he is joined by another educator hailing from Halifax, Nova Scotia, Ms. Lori-Ann Mills, and they will be co-presenting here. We will start off with our super important land acknowledgement. This is a reminder that Nelson's head office is situated upon traditional territories of the Wendat, Anishinaabe Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the Mississaugas of Scugog, Hiawatha First Nation, Alderville First Nation, and the Métis Nation. The treaty covering this area of land in Toronto, Ontario is collectively known as the Williams Treaties of 1923. I wish to recognize the significant contributions of Indigenous peoples across this land. The session today is being presented from Alberta as well as Nova Scotia. We seek a new relationship with First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples, one based in honor and deep respect. Nelson remains steadfast in our commitment to taking action toward truth and reconciliation by telling the truth about Canada's history and supporting Indigenous people, families, and communities through their healing journeys. So without further ado, I will pass this along for Jamie and Lori to take it away.
In this half-hour session, we're going to be looking at interactives that are embedded in our Edwin content, and you'll hear me refer to our Edwin content as learning objects. And these interactive learning objects are some of the most popular content that we have on Edwin. Students really love it because they find it engaging. It provides them with a challenge where they can manipulate variables and receive instant feedback so they can kind of gauge where they are in their learning. And you can find interactive learning objects in all of our subject libraries, and we are continually adding new interactives to those libraries. So we have some in there now, and we hope to have even more because, as we said, students love them. I'm going to go first and show you how to find those interactive objects. So those interactive learning objects, as I said, are found in our subject libraries in Edwin, intermixed with all of our other resources. They're distinguished by this blue icon here, which has the pointy index finger, and that icon identifies a learning object that has an embedded interactive. And you can either search by interactives in our keyword search, or you can filter interactives out in our libraries. And I'm going to show you how to do that right now. I'm just going to head over to my Edwin homepage, and you can get to Edwin by going to go.edwin.app and signing in with your school credentials. And you'll notice at the bottom of my homepage are all of my subject libraries. Currently, I have my Edwin set up for Ontario grades 7 to 9. So I'm going to just dive into one of my subject libraries. I'm going to go, let's see, I'm going to go over to my grade 9 science library right here. And I'm going to open that up and show you where to find those interactives. So here I am on my search page, and I'm just going to click on this very first heading because that's going to open up my whole library for grade 9 science. And here I go. I have pulled 308 learning objects, and each one of these rows represents a different learning object. And starting off of my list, I have some of those text-based learning objects. And then as I scroll down a little bit further, you can see that there's a little play icon that identifies these learning objects as videos. And then we're going to go down a little bit further to find my first interactive one, which is right there. It is. There's that icon with the finger. So that tells me that 2.8 major terrestrial ecosystems has an embedded interactive in it. Instead of going down and searching through all of the different resources, I can use my handy dandy filters up here when I'm searching. So I can just click on this interactive box right here, and all of my interactive learning objects come up. And then when I want to, I can just open up the resource. I'm going to open up this 3.3 interactive learning object. And when I do, it opens up in my Edwin Reader, and this is where all of our Edwin resources open. It doesn't matter if it's a video, if it's an interactive learning object, or a text-based learning object. Everything opens up in the reader so that I have all of these great Edwin tools available to me inside of the reader, including those math manipulatives that Sherry was showing this morning. So in this one, if I scroll down, here is that embedded interactive piece. Now in this example, it's an interactive map, and I just hit the play button, and now my map auto-magically turns into an interactive map. This one is showing me the diversity of plants on Earth, and I can go ahead and click off different areas. So right now I'm showing the highest density of plants in the world. And I could have this as a conversation starter in my class with my students and have them start to look at the map and go, why do we think that there is such a high level of plant diversity in these areas? I can then turn off those areas and turn on the areas that are showing low density and see that it changes on the map. And then we can have a conversation of why we think these areas have less biodiversity. So interactive learning objects, they can be used synchronously with your class to have class discussions around a topic, but they can also be used individually as well. So this is just one example of interactives. I'm going to show you some other examples in a moment. So this is one way to find interactives, is just diving down here into your subject libraries and filtering for interactives. Another quick way that you can look for interactives is doing it by a keyword search. So up here at the top right of my screen, I can put in interactive or interactive, both work. And now what I'm doing is I'm doing a cross-curricular search for interactives. You can see down here on the left where I'm pulling all of my interactives from. I have some from Language 7, Geography 7, Geography 8, Science and Technology 8, and so on and so forth. I can even highlight my interactives to filter, and then I have all of the interactives that are available to me in my Edwin library. So that's really the best ways to search for interactives, is searching down here by browse by subject, or doing that keyword search up here in the right-hand corner. So now that you know how to find interactives, it's time to showcase some examples. So I'm going to go back here, and these are the different types of embedded interactives that we have in Edwin. They take many forms. We have self-paced tutorials and quizzes that you can find in our math and sciences. We have matching activities. We have interactive maps and timelines. And also there are some great embedded math tools as well that Sherry didn't get to show you, but I'm going to show you some of those as well. So this is my absolute favorite part. I'm going to show you some of these interactive examples, but I've placed them all into a collection, and I'm going to share that link in the chat now. So if you're interested, you can log into your Edwin and then click on that link, and it will give you an opportunity to copy that collection into your own Edwins. And then at your own leisure, you can go through all of the examples that I'm showing you today on your own and play around with them and get to see what they're all about. So if you would like to do that, please feel free and go ahead, but you can just watch me as I show you my favorites of the interactives that we have. So the first example that I'm going to show you is another map. So I had already showed you that biodiversity map, but we have lots of different map interactives in Edwin. And this one is coming up from our French library. So it is in French, and I apologize, I'm not French speaking, but I love this map for this reason. I can click on or roll over on each of the provinces, and it highlights where it is on the map. But the magic happens when I roll over this icon. I can annotate the map. I can click annotate, and now I can draw directly on the map. I can bring attention to different parts of the map. I can write on this. which is fantastic for both me and my students. So I can project this on a screen, write on this to share with my students, but my students can come in here too and mark up the map as well. And then when we're finished, I can go back over here and I can download this image with my markup as a bunch of different files. So I can pick a PNG or a JPEG, even a PDF if that's how I want to save it on my device. Annotating maps is one of my new favorite things, and I hope that we can do more of this annotation in Edwin to come. So there is another example of how we've made maps interactive. I'm going to switch from looking at maps to some self-paced tutorials. So I'm just going to bring up another example to show you. This one is in math. It all comes up in the reader. Again, all of our interactives open up in our Edwin reader so that students, if they'd like, they can take notes as they follow along in the interactive. But this one has to do with math, and it's one on equivalent ratios. Self-paced tutorials are great because it gives students the ability to do some self-directed learning, some self-directed review, and it gives them time to learn from a different voice and then an opportunity to try it out for themselves. So let me just press play, give you an idea of what this looks like, and then I'll show you the interactivity in it.
Identify equivalent ratios. You can identify equivalent ratios using the greatest common factor. Example, express the ratio 16 to 24 in lowest term. Complete the list of factors for 16 and 24.
So then it stops here, and then it gives the opportunity for the student to try it on their own. So for the factors of 16, I'm going to have 2 times 8 and 4 times 4. And then for 24, I'm going to have 2 times 12. I'm going to have 3 times 8, and then 4 times 6. And then I give it a, and then students can hit the check button to see if they are on the right track, and they are. And once they have that completed, they can go on to the next step at their own pace as it provides feedback.
What is the greatest common factor for 16 and 24?
If they put in a wrong answer, it will let them know, and it gives them the opportunity to try again. So just another example of how we can take interactives to another level to have some sort of self-paced learning and back and forth. The next one that I want to show you is one of my absolute favorites. I kind of say that everyone is my favorite, but this one is the one that I always come back to and I like to show with teachers. It's another math example. I do lean more math and science, so I'm so happy that Jamie's going to be going into the English language arts coming up next. But this one is a Desmos activity. So if you're a math teacher, you may be familiar with Desmos. They are a great provider of scientific graphing apps and geometry tools. And we do have Desmos available as one of our math tools right up here in the reader. We have it as a standalone tool that we can have opened alongside of our learning object, but we also have them embedded inside of our learning objects as well. This one is demonstrating Pythagorean theorem, and I can go up here and slide and change the sizes of the triangle that I'm working with and change the ratios. But what I really like is that it's taking this abstract concept of side A of a triangle plus side B of a triangle is going to give me the square of side C. So the square of side A plus the square root of side B gives me in total the square of side C. And I can see that really nicely by pulling over my puzzle pieces. And there's the interactivity with this one that I can either demonstrate from the teacher side, or I can have my students go in this and try for themselves. And it's a really nice visual in terms of showing the relationship between the square of sides. So that's the Pythagorean theorem example, and it is in the collection that I've shared with you. Next one I'm going to show you is a matching one. We have matching interactives in our different subject areas. I'm going to show you a science one, and then I'll show you a history one. This one is a human body matchup. If you teach biology, you know that we love to do analogies between real life and our systems. So you might have done the cell one when you were a kid, where you're finding matching terms for different parts of the cell, like powerhouses and manufacturing plants and so forth. This one is a human body matchup. So students can look at the different tissues that are in the human body and then match them with real world examples. So for instance, for the brain, they might say that's the computer chip. For the heart, since it's pumping blood, that's a bicycle pump. And they can make those matching relationships and do a check here within the interactive. So a lot of fun there. For history, I'll bring up a history one that's matching. This one, I believe, is secondary. Yeah, is more of a secondary level one. So in this one, we're looking at organizing countries, whether they're in the Warsaw Pact or NATO. So I can bring Canada over. I know we're a NATO country. And for Warsaw Pact, I can bring East Germany over. And again, you can see that as I pull things over, it's going to let me know if I've got it right or wrong. So just a nice little activity that's going to consolidate student learning as they are working in resources. It's a time to pause. It's time for students to consolidate that information that they're learning and start to organize it and process it for themselves. Along that line as well, in terms of that drag and drop, we have, again, back to maps and history and social studies. This one, we are dragging different countries over to label parts of the map. I think you're starting to see that we have lots of different types of interactivities. I am not going to get any of these right. I am not a geography person. But you get to start to see that we have lots of different styles of interactives in our different subject areas, just ready for you to go in and explore and to have fun with. The last one I'm going to show you is for those history and social studies teachers. Though in science, we do timelines a lot as well. This is just another example of a drag and drop, but this time looking at the events leading up to World War I. So timelines also are great for consolidating information and organizing as well. So that is just some of the interactives that you can find in Edwin, and please feel free to look through that collection that I gave you. But that completes our tour of interactives in Edwin on the science, math, social studies, history side. As we said, Jamie's going to, in about another 8 minutes, he's going to take you through the English language arts interactive. So I invite you all to stay for that if you are interested.
As Claire mentioned, my name's Jamie, and I kind of took the baton from Lori, who introduced us to interactives more generally, and I'm going to focus a little bit more on Edwin's interactivity in English language arts. So our session today highlights the ways that students can interact with and within Edwin learning objects as part of their English language arts learning. Though we won't be able to cover each and everything that Edwin has to offer in the short amount of time that we have together, we will still get a chance to take a look at Edwin's built-in tools and interactives and how they can foster engagement and empower your students. So I've created a collection of just some of my favorites, and I'm just going to jump to that really quickly, and I'm going to share the link as well so that you have access to these objects that I'm going to take a look at. So the first few that we're going to look at are existing interactives. And then the second half of our session is just going to talk about how we can use tools to interact with texts. So the first learning object I'm going to click into is from our grade 5 literacy collection, in Ontario's library. And this one focuses on idioms. The cool features about our English language arts interactives are there are a few different types of interactives. So we've got Some quizzes. You can go through some selections as you're teaching. In this case, you're teaching about idioms and you're supporting students in practicing. There are ways that you can select, and you can also have students check their answers as well. So it provides immediate feedback with these interactives, how students are doing. And you can just see, I guessed and got about half of them right. But it allows students to have that immediate feedback as they're learning, and can foster not only the interactivity with text, but also empowerment, as students can check their responses and try again until they solidify their learning. And you'll see the remainder of this has some interactivity around selecting answers as well. So this is one example of an interactive that has students selecting responses that relate to idioms in their language arts learning. And then of course they can check their answers. So I'm going to go back to that collection and show you a different learning object related to contractions. So this interactive learning object offers the ability for students to select from a list, which is another great interactive learning opportunity for them. So here we're looking at contractions, 2 words that are combined, and we're allowing students to practice their learning and gain that immediate feedback. Here, they're looking at what contractions might be formed. For instance, if you put it and is together, remember this is grade 5 learning. So here, this is a great example of immediate feedback about the apostrophe use in contractions. There's a couple of examples of what word combines with you to create you are or your. So again, students can select, check their answers, and get that immediate feedback and have that opportunity to practice. And then further down, they get to practice in dialogue or in sentences. So it allows them to just build their learning. And Selena, I see your question. The feedback is for the student, so it's not for you, but that immediate feedback for students to see what they've got correct and the ability to correct their misunderstandings is super powerful for their learning. I'm going to hop back to my collection, and I'm going to go to 2 more examples of interactives similar to what Lori was looking at, but these ones are more related to English language arts and literacy learning, as well as cross-curricular connections. So the digital footprint collection is part of our digital citizenship learning objects in Edwin. And again, it's interactive. Here we have interactive quizzes. So one of them is a quiz that has students reflect on their practices and determine what their digital footprint is. So students can reflect on how they respond to certain situations. I'm just going to click through really quickly. And you'll see it'll automatically populate with a result about digital footprint practices and let students know where they're at. And then further down in the learning object, students are also able to check their learning again with these interactive quizzes. So these interactive quizzes are I'm going to repeat myself, really awesome for that immediate feedback for students as they're engaging in their English language arts learning. And then lastly, while we're still continuing to build our collections of interactives across subject areas, you might find, and I think Lori mentioned this earlier, that there's tons of interactives in math and science. And one great way that you can make connections to your English language arts classroom is looking for those cross-curricular connections. I think one of the easiest ways to establish cross-curricular or foster cross-curricular connections is through vocabulary and glossaries of terms. So here I've selected I believe grade 9 science learning object that's interactive, and it focuses on states of matter. And this interactive helps students to solidify and practice their understanding of key terms and what constitutes a solid, a liquid, and gas in their science learning. So making those cross-curricular connections specifically by enforcing subject-specific vocabulary is a really strong way to leverage Edwin's interactives in your English language arts classroom. So I'm going to hop back out to my collection And back to my slides, because the next part of our presentation here will focus on how Edwin's tools actually make existing texts interactive for English language arts learning. So we're going to look specifically at 5 tools today. And again, I know our time is precious and short together. So I am going to go through these pretty quickly, but there are tons of resources, including the Help Center, that can support you in continuing to develop your understanding of the capabilities of Edwin's tools. So each of these different tools can be used on their own or together, and all of them work towards empowering our students, fostering independence as they develop and become proficient in different reading and writing strategies in English language arts. And I should say, I keep saying English language arts, or ELA, that's what we call it in Alberta, but I know it looks a little bit different in other provinces. So I just wanted to make that mention. So I'll give you a quick overview, and then we'll look at each of these in action with some learning objects that I have selected. So first of all, the notes tool, a really popular tool, and it allows students to record their ideas, responses, questions, and more as they read. These notes documents can be saved to Google Drive, or they can be downloaded and accessed within other learning management systems. And this tool is also compatible with the Chrome browser's dictation tool, enabling accessibility through speech to text for students who might struggle with writing or need some additional support. In addition, and in connection with those notes, there's a built-in highlighter with 3 colors. I love this because, for as long as I've been a teacher, we put highlighters on the school list, school supply list, and get students to bring those in. And I have to say, by the end of this, well, not even the end of the first week, or sorry, the first month, but usually by the end of the first week, those disappear, and you can't engage with those tools the same way. So I am so excited as a language arts teacher to be able to have access to this highlighter built in with the text with 3 different colors, and it can be used to mark learning objects. The information that's highlighted is also collated and can be saved in conjunction with the notes that students take, which is really exciting. Next, students have access to the source information tool, which supports with organizing and managing information with those competencies, and of course, with informational research projects as well, especially when you get to those higher grades, ensuring that students are well versed in citing information and recording source information. We also have a built-in dictionary tool that students can use while they read. They can even build their own glossary of terms, but this is super handy and also saves time. I know a lot of times in the classroom, we support students in their independence and support them with resources to Google the meanings of words. This is built in and also vetted. So it's really helpful for students, and they have to wade through less information to have access to what they need. And lastly, we have a text-to-speech feature that's available for entire learning objects or selections of text, which supports accessibility for our learners. All right, I'm going to hop back into Edwin now and provide some different examples of how you might use these tools in conjunction with your lesson ideas to deliver learning with students. And I'm just going to go to a learning object towards the bottom of my collection if you're still following along. And it's a short story called Not Ever Again. So I'm going to cover a few tools with this particular resource, and I'm recognizing that we're going to do our best with this, with these sample lesson ideas, knowing we haven't quite read the story yet, or you folks haven't had a chance to read the story yet. But I will offer some ideas with this in mind. Again, it's a short story, and it's actually for our grade 9 applied language arts in Ontario. So the first tool I talked about is the notes tool, and you can access this on the top pane of your screen. It's like a pencil in a square, and it opens up this notes pane alongside the text, which is super handy, especially as students are responding to questions or making connections as they write. At the bottom, you can resize, make it bigger if you've got more writing to do, or make it smaller so that you can read the text carefully. All right. With this notes pane, you can take notes as you normally would. Students can, write annotations or notes or thoughts, brainstorm, whatever, as they read along. Or you might have a more carefully constructed lesson where you have students answering questions before they read, during they read, and after they read. So I'm just going to give you one example. So this text starts with a question. What do you think? And I'm actually going to copy and paste this into my notes. And I would maybe ask students to respond to the question before they read and after, to reflect on, if their opinion changed based on the story that was presented to them. So whenever you highlight text in an Edwin learning object, it auto-populates it doesn't auto-populate, it pops up with some options. One of them is copy. So students can copy things directly from the text. This is super helpful when they're, taking quotations as part of their responses. And again, they can pop over into the notes, paste it, and then respond to questions. So students can organize, with titles, subtitles, what have you. And there is lots of space here as well. Next, onto the highlight, which you saw as I was going through and selecting that text. Something that I'll just show you really quickly is whenever you select text, it will pop up with the highlighter. And as soon as you highlight something in a particular color, you will see it also pop up in your notes pane. So the notes and highlights go together and populate in the same place. And as I mentioned a little bit earlier, you can download these. Either you can save them directly to Google Drive, or you can download them and use them with a learning management system. Stephanie, great question. That is exactly where I'm headed to next. So thank you so much for bringing that up. For students, we're teaching reading strategies throughout all grade levels. One of the reading strategies that we teach is monitoring and clarifying. As part of monitoring and clarifying, we support students in looking up the meanings of new words that maybe they don't understand, or they need to know the definitions for, so that they can comprehend the text itself. And I mentioned that this is available by just, let me see here. I'm going to scroll to find a good word to highlight. So this is available when you highlight a word or some of the text in a learning object. It brings up those options. Again, I just showed you that kind of traffic light here of highlighter colors. There's 3 that are available. Again, I showed you can copy from here, but there's also this question mark. And this question mark brings up definitions that students can look through. The great part is there's access to multiple definitions. So especially as in higher levels, when we get to words that have multiple meanings, or a word that is both an adjective and an adverb, or a noun and a verb, students can scroll through side to side for those words that have multiple meanings. And of course, they can also copy and paste those into their notes if one of the things you've assigned them to do is kind of create a glossary of new terms, or a glossary of descriptive language that they can use in their writing. So this is super handy. And for me, it never gets old. It's so exciting for students to have that access at their fingertips. And it really does support their comprehension as they monitor and clarify throughout. Awesome. And then the last thing I just wanted to show you with this particular learning object, I quickly covered the notes and highlights and how you might use them. A lot of our texts also have really great responding questions or response questions at the end, which are really rooted in like reading and writing strategies. And the responses to questions could really leverage the highlight and notes tool. So for instance, the visualizing question is a really great example. Visualizing question, sorry, is a really great example of this. What details in the description were the most helpful? You can have students respond to these by actually highlighting the text, annotating it, showing that, I say annotating, it's not annotating in the same text, in the same sense, sorry, as writing directly in the text, but students can, highlight and respond in the notes in a similar fashion. Maybe they highlight and say, I selected this. Oh, my spelling's not great. I selected this excerpt for this reason, and provide their reasons there. Okay. So all of these tools together, really great, leveraging Edwin's tools for improved comprehension in English language arts and improved, interactivity with text. Awesome. Okay, so this is an informational text and has really great graphics and images as well. A few things that I'm going to show you for this one. So because it's an informational text, students might use it for research. We want them to have access to information, source information, so that they can cite the source and cite the author. There is a tool at the top pane on the left-hand side that says source info. And it has a button that allows you to copy to your clipboard. So students can copy, they can put it into their notes for this particular document, and then they can, take quotations or whatever they need for their research project and have that citation right there. So that's a great tool that supports interactivity and is really helpful, especially as you get to those higher levels when you're supporting citations and works cited, bibliography, and so on. In addition to our dictionary where we can highlight unfamiliar words, we also have like a hyperlinked glossary definition for new terms as well, or new words. This is really great in English language arts because you're supporting students in continuing to expand their vocabulary, with descriptive terms or what have you. So students can interact with these as well. They can turn it on so that they have access to it to ensure comprehension, and turn it off as well, and copy and paste those definitions. Now, I mentioned we have accessibility features that are really helpful. One of them is the text to speech. So at the very top in the middle, there's a play button. This allows students to access the text to speech for the whole learning object, meaning that it will be read out loud for them, or they can select a particular statement and have that exact same option for it to be read to them.
Mars spacecraft are assembled.
So I'm going to pause that so you don't have to hear that, but you'll see that that's super built in. And again, it empowers students because they can access it when they need it. They can access those tools when they need it. Our notes are also compatible with speech to text in that you can go into your Chrome browser. Once you're clicked into your notes, you can go edit, start dictation, and then sample sentence, you can say it and it'll type in. So my sample sentence is still typing, but you can kind of see, there we go. You can kind of see how it populates really quickly. For those students who need supports with writing, it's compatible. I just want to reiterate that there are many more ways that you can foster interactivity with our English language arts learning objects using the built-in tools that we already have. Something that I like to do to connect reading and writing, develop those skills at the same time, have students practice their descriptive writing using a text like this, scrolling to an image and having students write a descriptive paragraph, what's going on in the image, and then you're making that connection for those students. Students can also highlight and rewrite, particularly when it comes to like short stories. They can practice their descriptive language. They can practice maybe turning a descriptive paragraph into dialogue, all right within the text on their own screen. And of course, these things can be shared with you as the teacher as well. Thank you for taking that whirlwind trip with me and learning how you can bring Edwin into your classroom to empower your students' learning.